All right, here's my first question for you. How many of you want to be here? Okay, good. There's some that don't. That's okay. Today we're going to talk about the invisible four-letter word. I actually just used it. If you can figure out what word it was that I just said, then you're way ahead of the game. So that's the primer for today. In order to make this really impactful in your life, what I need you to do is figure out a conflict that you have in your life right now. So think about something that's a conflict between you and another person. It could be a conflict between you and your grades. It could be a conflict between you and your religious beliefs. It could be a conflict between you and some entity, maybe your boss if you work. I'm going to give you 10 seconds, but I want you to write down, my conflict is, and I think it's because, and then write a because. All right, you ready to go? We're going to explore that and see if we can solve it for you. Has anybody here ever been to Egypt? Okay. Oh, Tom's been to Egypt. I've been to Egypt. Tom, when you stood there and you looked at the pyramids of Egypt, what did you think? Grab your microphone. What'd you think?
Bigger than you imagined.
Bigger than you imagine. Now, those things have been around for 4,500 years. Weather, storms, wars, earthquakes, they're still standing. And the thing that makes them stand so strong for so long is that they're designed to be that way. A pyramid is a strong, stable piece of hardware that's just out there. It's sitting on sand, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And you want your life to be like a pyramid, stable, strong, sustainable. That word sustainable, we hear that a lot in our society. That's what we want. We want to be like that. But oftentimes in our lives, what happens is we build our lives more like this, right? What would happen if the Egyptians had built their pyramids upside down with the point of it in the sand? It'd end up as a pile of rubble. And who wants to go see a pile of rubble? Nobody. Nobody would go see that. That's ridiculous. But many times in our lives, we are like that. In fact, I have these foam pyramids. And if I hold it in my hand, it's just as strong and stable as can be. I can move my hand around, it's not going to fall over. But as soon as I turn that thing over and I let go of it, it will not stay standing. It is unstable, it is unsustainable, and it will not last. And our lives are just like this. Who wants a pyramid? Anybody? There you go. Okay, so we don't want our lives to be like this. We want our lives to be upright. Now, what causes us to be upside down and what causes us to be upright? And my proposal to you today is, it's one thing. It's called the invisible four-letter word. And what is that? Does anybody know? Want. I asked you at the very beginning, how many of you want to be here? And that's the question. You're going to be successful in life or not successful based upon your wants. You can have what you want based upon your wants, or your wants can be taken away from you. Every morning when you wake up, an invisible force propels you throughout your day. When your alarm goes off, you either want to get up or you don't want to get up, so you hit the snooze. Then your bladder says, yes, you want to get up. So you get up and you go take care of business, and then you want some breakfast. But you want to study because you have a test at 9 a.m. You're like, oh, I want to get a good grade, but I should have studied. Do you see how your wants, from one moment to the next, your wants lead you all the way through your day until your head hits the pillow at the end of the day? That's what drives you, moment by moment, second by second. So we're going to look through this. Now, here's the thesis statement. You all have to write thesis statements, and this is the thesis statement for this presentation today. You need to captivate this in your mind, okay? Harmony within ourselves and with others, and therefore the degree to which we flourish, it increases as we learn to do two things, and they're in red. We have to learn to recognize and then regulate the natural struggle that exists between conflicting wants, the diverse wants of others, and our response to those wants. Now, there's a lot packed into this thesis statement. So much so. But the two things I want you to remember from this is you're going to have to learn to recognize and then regulate. And we're going to talk about those two things because every day, every moment, your wants are governing everything that you do in your life. And when you can learn to recognize them and then regulate them, it will make all the difference in the world. Okay, we're going to break apart the upside down pyramid. So the upside down pyramid is made up of 5 sections, and this is what causes us to be upside down, topsy-turvy, unstable, unsustainable. This is what makes our lives, we try and prop it up. We like to tell everybody, everything's okay, it's all good, life's fine, but no, you're upside down. And this is not a condemnation, this is just a state of being upside down. And you can flip your life over. Who wants a pyramid? Oh, there goes to that fine young lady, her hand went up first. You're welcome. Okay, so let's break this down. We're gonna figure out what it is that makes us upside down. Are you ready? Here we go. So the very first thing, the very top of the upside down pyramid are unregulated wants. When we fail to regulate our wants, when we just want what we want. I came into town yesterday, and my favorite thing in the world, lived 11 years in Wisconsin. My favorite thing in the whole world is Culver's. And we drove into town, there's a Culver's here in Orem, and I said to my wife, I want Culver's. But there was a few other things that we had to do, and so I had to regulate that and not go to Culver's, even though I wanted to go to Culver's. Now, what would happen to me if I wanted Culver's every day, every hour for every meal? Yeah, I would end up I would not look like this. So I have to regulate my wants. Notice that the top of the upside down pyramid, look how big it is. It's huge. When our wants go unregulated, we just want what we want and we don't want what anybody else wants. We just want. Have you ever met a person like that? So that person standing on top of an upside down pyramid with all their unregulated wants, their perspective is only their own wants. They cannot see what's happening underneath them. Look at this person's perspective. He can't see what's happening underneath because what's going on underneath an upside down pyramid is he's blind to it. Completely blind to it. And we're going to show you what does happen when your wants go unregulated. So when your wants go unregulated and you don't get what you want, then negative emotions creep up inside of you. Have you ever seen the child in the shopping cart where the mom goes to the checkout counter and then the diabolical marketing people, right? Who's in marketing? Who's doing marketing? You. I'm blaming you. Okay, so the marketing people, what do they do with the candy bars? They put them right at eye level. It's exactly right. And now, you know what the sneaky thing is? Now the marketing people, was there a marketing person over here? Where are you? Raise your hand. Yeah, they don't dare. Yeah, it's you. You put the light in the cases now. They're not just right there. Now there's lights in the cases. So the kid looks over, and what does he see? Candy bar. What does he want? Candy bar. Mother says, no, you can't have it. What's the next thing that happens? You can predict it. Tantrum. Negative emotions. And it happens not only to children in shopping carts at a checkout counter, it happens to every one of us. We all have negative emotions. And those negative emotions then lead to the next step down. When those negative emotions just take over, then we make irrational conclusions. Here's what happens. Inside your head, there's a little walnut-shaped part of your brain. It's called the amygdala. And the amygdala is the fight or flight part of your brain. And when emotions take over, that amygdala activates and it clobbers your prefrontal cortex right here at the front, the thinking part of your brain, and the thinking part of your brain stops thinking. It goes, and then you just become irrational. So the little child says, I want a candy bar, and so he starts throwing a fit, and then he starts saying all kinds of crazy things, and adults do the same thing too. You become irrational. Your thinking part of your brain stops working because of negative emotions, because of chemicals that happen in your brain. It's a natural thing that happens. And it started because, why? Unregulated wants. Then those irrational conclusions turn into a reactive action. You're not proactive, you're reactive. You're just going off of what's going on inside your head, and then you react. Have you ever seen like those compilations on what is it called? America's Funniest Home Videos, where somebody hides in a box, right? And then they pop out of the box, and scare the living daylights out of a person, right? And what happens? The person like punches them, right? That's a reactive response. They weren't thinking, they just like, and you've done it too. You've had reactive responses of road rage, or where you say something that you shouldn't have said. You do something that you later regret. That's your reactive response. And afterwards, you say, oh, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. What was I thinking? The problem was you weren't thinking because your wants went unregulated. Then some negative emotion filled up inside of you. You went irrational, and then you punched your roommate. Okay, that's how it happens. Okay, then what happens? You punch your roommate and you end up in a really bad situation where you're not talking anymore. Just look at the newspaper and you can see this all the time. This happens over and over and over again. There was a man in 2019, I won't tell you his name, you can read about it in the book. And he wanted a raise, and he worked for an airline. He was an airline mechanic, and there was negotiations going on between the Airline Mechanics Association and the airline, and it wasn't going very well, and he got mad. He wanted a raise, but it wasn't coming. So, next step, he was angry about the contract negotiations that weren't going well. He became irrational, and he says, if I sabotage an aircraft, it'll come back, and then maybe I can get some overtime, and I can have more money in my pocket. So what does he do? His reactive response was he disabled the navigation system in that aircraft and put a piece of foam in there and superglued it with superglue. This is intentional. You're thinking, what? But it's a reactive response, because no right-minded person would disable a navigation system on an aircraft that was flying from Miami to Nassau over the ocean. But he did it. Well, luckily, the pilots, when they got out onto the runway, they noticed an alarm go off on the navigation system. They taxied back to the gate, and upon further investigation, they found out the aircraft mechanic had purposely sabotaged the whole thing. He ended up in a powerless position. He went to jail for sabotaging an aircraft that had 150 people on board. Like, what right-minded person would do that? Well, it's not a right-minded person. We can see he didn't get what he wanted, a raise. It created negative emotions. Those negative emotions turned into irrational conclusions, which led to a reactive response, which led to him going to jail. It happens all the time. So this is a horrible thing. So let's turn this around. Disharmony with our wants turns into dishonor at the bottom, and nobody wants to be like that. So let's just turn this thing around, okay? Let's figure it out. What about being upright? You can take your wants and you can flip them over so that they're smaller. Now look, when we flip the pyramid over, tell me what you see about the main difference between the wants on the upright pyramid versus an upside down one. What do you see? Much narrower, smaller, pointed upward and outward. In other words, your wants aren't focused on you, downward and inward. They're focused outward on those around you. And they're much smaller. Okay, so look at the perspective of this person, standing on very few wants that are focused on other individuals. He can see every course all the way down from the top to the bottom. This person can see things that the other person can't. You can see the cause and effect relationship between every one of these patterns that happens. Let's go through them. Super simple. Same as the upside down, only just the opposite. This time we're regulating our wants. When the alarm goes off in the morning, you don't hit the snooze button. You're like, I gotta go. I know what I'm doing today. I want to get an A so that I get a good job in the world. Alarm goes off, you get up, off you go. You know what you're doing. You're going along and you're helping other people. Your wants are basically linked with another person's wants. I want what my wife wants. I want what my boss wants. I want what my community wants. And when I do that, guess what happens? The next step down, instead of negative emotions, they're now positive. You're feeling good about yourself. And when dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, when those chemicals are released in your brain, guess what happens? You become very, very rational. In fact, your creativity goes through the roof. You're able to problem solve. You're able to work with other individuals. Scientists have discovered the amazing benefits of positive chemicals that are released when you have positive emotions, and they cause our brain to work really remarkable ways. You can solve problems when you're upright that you can never solve when you're upside down because the wrong part of your brain is engaged when you're upside down. Now, your rational solutions, once you're like, oh, I know exactly what's happening here, I know what I need to do, that turns into proactive actions. Sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do. But when you're upright, you realize that sometimes you just have to do those. And you just do it. You are proactive. You accomplish. You get up and you go for it and you do it whether you want to or not because your wants are now regulated. You've got control of them. Okay, so then that leaves you in the very last part of this, and that is in a powerful position. How many of you know a person that acts like this? That their wants are in harmony with those around them, and it leads to being honorable, and people just are attracted to them. They want to be with them. They want to go get advice from them. They want help from them. They want to work with them. When you find individuals like that, this is the reason why. This is psychologically what's going on inside their head. And every one of you can do this and be this and have this in your lives. All right, so let's consider the conflict that you have going on inside, the one that you wrote down. Let me ask a question. You don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you can kind of see why the problem exists? Can you see can you just give a little nod like, oh, now I understand why there's a conflict. Did we reveal it? Okay. I see a lot of nods. It all comes from what you want versus what the other person wants or the other entity wants. There's a difference. And you or the other person haven't regulated those wants yet. All right, so let's go to the next thing. Although you know the problem and you know the solution, I haven't given you yet the application. How are you going to fix that conflict? And today, what I want you to do is when you leave, you can actually know how you can fix your conflict that you're having in your life, okay? So the first question is in your conflict, you have to ask yourself, what do you want? Really, what is it that you want? Do you just want to be upside down like this? Or would you rather just flip that thing over? You can just make all your wants get smaller and only want what you want, but that's not going to fix anything. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to apply what I call the core. And in the core are 4 principles. This is your core. This comes deep within you. You have got to find, like within your own soul, the way to get what it is you really, really want in life, okay? So let me unlock 4 principles for you to go from being upside down to becoming upright. You ready? Here we go. This is it. First, you're gonna begin with consideration. This is super simple. My wife says, honey, I want you to mow the lawn. I'm getting ready for a presentation. You want me to mow the lawn? She's like, yes. Could you see right at first? What do I not want to do? I don't want to mow the lawn. She says, I want you to mow the lawn. Okay, but the lawn's getting this tall. So I have to begin with consideration. Oh, we're leaving, we're gonna go to Utah. When I get home, instead of mowing the lawn, I'm gonna have to call a baler to come bale my lawn, right? So yes, I want what she wants. So I begin with consideration, and then I do the next beautiful thing in this, and that is I just say okay. Now, begin with consideration. If you stop and think about it, begin with consideration is based on the first 2 commandments. That is, love God, love your neighbor. If you love somebody else and they ask you to do something that they want done, you're just like, oh, I consider what you're having to say instead of blocking it. And then the next step is, after you've considered it, just say okay. Now let me tell you the beautiful part about this, just say okay. When you just say okay, remember I told you that when you don't get what you want, negative emotions hijack your brain. What happens is your amygdala, it takes and it pumps chemicals onto the thinking part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, snuffs it and prevents it from actually being able to think. When you just say okay, guess what happens? The conflict goes away because there isn't. When one person says, I want you to mow the lawn, I don't want to mow the lawn, what happens? You feel it? There's the uprising of negative emotions. But if the one person says, I want you to mow the lawn, and you say, okay, you laugh, right? You laugh because there's no more emotion. The emotion is now positive. You completely block the amygdala from taking over the prefrontal cortex when you just say okay. Now, it doesn't mean you've completely agreed with the person, that you're not 100%. I say, okay, can I do it in an hour? And of course, she has consideration because I've taught her all these principles. She's super good at them now. That's what makes our marriage strong. She says okay, and I'm like, okay, great, I'll do it in an hour. And then we can get that all done. And then did I mow the lawn, honey? Was it to your satisfaction? Perfect, okay, excellent. See how happy we are? There's no conflict. There could have been, but there's not. We're right-sided. So you just say okay. Now we'll come back to that because sometimes you don't say okay. There's some situations where you don't. If there's anybody that's in danger or there's a difficult situation that compromises someone's integrity, you don't start with just say okay. You do begin with consideration. You might just jump to this one, adjust your distance. Adjust your distance means that you're gonna get away from the things you don't want, and at the same time, you're gonna get closer to the things you do want. This is exactly where you have to use rationality to say, I want a good grade, so I need to stop tick-tocking, and I want to focus and study. I want to get away from my phone, and I want to get closer to the textbook. Nobody likes that, but that's the rational thing to do. You want to get away from the bad influences in your life and get closer to the good influences of your life. You're going to find out the things that you really want, and that brings us to the next one. The fourth part of the core is, I call this the Spice Girls principle. Remember the Spice Girls? You're probably almost too young for that. They sang the song, this will be in your head the rest of the day, I apologize for this. Yo, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. So this is the Spice Girls principle. Yo, remember what you want, what you really, really want. You've got to write this down. You got to put it in a journal. You got to put it in your phone. You got to do whatever it takes to remember what it is you really, really want. Because the close wants, the Culver's Double Deluxe Butterburger is always calling me. But I remember what it is I really, really want, and that is to be healthy and fit. Because that Double Deluxe burger would take what I really, really want away from me. And you have to do that with your phone and schooling, your relationships, everything. So you wrap all these together, you're going to utilize them in a really remarkable way. You're almost always going to begin with consideration. You have to stop and consider, oh, is this what I want? Maybe you'll begin with, okay, I have to remember what it is I really, really want. Okay, yeah, let's do this. I do need to get away from that and get closer to that. You will play with these. You cannot just, after this presentation, you're not just going to be masters at being upright individuals. You have got to work and work and work at it. In fact, I'll give some books away to those who really want to become upright their whole lives. Because in here, if you will study this, you want one? See, he wants one. There we go. He really, really wants one. You're welcome. Because if you can master the core, your life will completely change and you'll become a powerful person. What will happen is you'll encounter situations like you do right now, and you'll be upside down. You're like, why do I act like this? Why is life like that? You'll begin to apply the elements of the core. You'll work through them. It won't happen in an instant. You're just going to work them over. And then that upside down situation, the conflict that you've been struggling with, is slowly going to dissolve in the background, and then it's going to reemerge in your life as an upright, strong, stable situation. And isn't that what you want? Don't you want to be around for 4,500 years like the pyramids of Egypt? Don't you want to be known for your honor, your integrity, your ability to get things done, your collaboration, and most especially, that you know how to want what other people want? That is the promise that I give to you if you will live this. Now, consider the conflict that you have in your life. Work it, those principles in the core. I do want to see a raise of hands now. How many of you can see a way out of the conflict now? Raise your hand if you can. About half. So those that don't, in my book, I actually cover what happens when there are wants that are in extreme conflict with each other and you can't see your way out. And the thing that's holding back the solution from your conflict right now are actually false assumptions. And we can fix any one of those. But we don't have time for that because we're all done now. So, what do you really want in your life? You want to become a powerful person. And I can tell you today that if you apply these principles found in the invisible four-letter word, I'm here to tell you, because I've seen it over and over again. Individuals in business, if you run a business like this, I'm telling you, you can have what you really, really want in life. Thank you for coming today.
Let's thank them.